Recently, Freddie Gray was killed when he was given a rough ride inside a Baltimore police van. He got smashed around in that van, suffered debilitating injuries, and then passed away. The Baltimore cops said, "Oh, us? No, we don't normally do that. Oh, it must have been an accident." All the usual excuses that you get. Well, we now have a picture of a Baltimore police van with a sign inside of it. Here's what it says: "Enjoy your ride, because we sure will." Oh, that's classy. So, gee, I wonder if they did this practice of not buckling in the guys and having them get smashed around in that van more often, more regularly. Of course they did. In fact, really interesting revelations by a former Baltimore police officer, Michael Wood. He explained why the Baltimore cops viewed the community as the enemy. He said, when you work in policing, you're inundated early on with the us versus them mentality. It's ingrained in you that this is a war, and if someone isn't wearing a uniform, they're the enemy. It just becomes part of who you are and how you do your job. And when all you're doing is responding to calls, you're only seeing the people in the neighborhoods when there's conflict. So you just start to assume that conflict is all there is, just bad people doing bad things. So he explains there, it's true, there is an us versus them mentality. And he wound up realizing that's not the case when he was doing narcotics work, because for a long time he was doing stakeouts and just watching the neighborhood. And then he realized this. He said, but sitting in the van and watching people just living their lives, I started to see that these were just people. They weren't that different from me. They had to pay rent, see their kids off to school. The main difference is that as a white kid growing up in my neighborhood, I was never going to get arrested for playing basketball in the street. I was never going to get patted down because I was standing on a street corner. There was no chance I was going to get a criminal record early on for basically being a kid. And he realized, oh my God, they're regular people too. Of course! Isn't that amazing? That in the culture of policing, they don't even recognize the community as regular people. They just view them as the enemy, and they're the occupying force, the cops are. In fact, when he got called out, they said, hey, listen, it's great that you're revealing this information now, but shouldn't you have done something back then to talk about all the abuses the cops were doing that you're now highlighting? It's like, look, guys, you're right. I should have done better, and I didn't. And why? He explains that. He says, it all goes back to this whole us versus them thing. You suit up, you get out there, you're with your brothers, you're an occupying force. Your job is to fight crime, and these are the guys you do it with. So you just don't see their abuse. It doesn't even register, because those people are the enemy. They aren't really even people. They're just the enemy. So in reality, the Baltimore cops, and honestly, cops all across the country, are worse than we thought. And it's not because they're bad people. It is the culture. And that's exactly what Michael Wood says. He's like, this is how we get trained. And he says, he would be shocked if it was any different for a Philly cop or a New Orleans cop or a Chicago cop. He's like, we all get trained to be the occupying force. We don't see the community as real people. They're the enemy. Isn't that amazing? The culture is more toxic than we realize. So now look, through these realizations and through shining a spotlight on it, you begin to make a difference, we hope. And in the case of Baltimore, we're at least headed in that direction. Because it was also announced today, the Baltimore Police Department is installing video cameras capable of recording in its vans following protests over the April death of Freddie Gray, a black man who suffered severe injuries in the back of a police van. So it's not much, but it is a beginning. Understand we've got a real issue here. We've got to explain to cops, as Michael Wood now says, you're guardians. Okay, you are not warriors. Don't use that kind of talk. Understand that your job is to protect this community. At least having vans record what happens inside of Baltimore police, having cameras that record what happens inside of Baltimore police vans is a good first step. We hope that there are many, many future steps that go along with it.